Paul here from International Amateur Street Photography Group, and I'm here to interview one of our members. His name's Steve Hooker. He's been a member of our group now for quite a few years. He's one of our founding members, and I'd like to get to know him a little bit and find out what makes him tick.
About this recently because I thought it was a lot later in my life than I thought, but I realized that photography was part of my life from a very early age. My mum had a camera which she loved taking photographs with, big kind of plastic thing, but she always took it to the chemists on the corner, the local chemists.
Yeah.
And he'd put this roll of film in, and I didn't understand until maybe I was a lot older that roll of film was 120 millimeter, so it literally was a roll of film. And although I didn't take photographs, I looked at photographs, always looked at photographs, obviously family stuff. And I've never been a fan of like posed photographs. So I don't like people that stop and say cheese. I like to capture people as naturally as I can. You know, if they're blinking, then, you know, that kind of photograph, then yeah, that's not so good, you know. But I think it's always been around me for a long time, if that answers the question.
So at what age were you?
Let me see, primary school age. I tried to join the primary school after school camera club, but they asked the question, would your mum let you borrow, you know, her camera? And I kind of said, I don't think so. So I sat back down again. I don't know if she would or she wouldn't have done.
Right.
But I remember one of my teachers, Mr. Morris, he took slide photography, and I actually kind of almost followed him around a school fair once, watching him take photographs.
Right. So very young then.
Yeah. Very.
So what was your first camera?
Kodak Instamatic, which had the cassette film you dropped in the back.
Is that the one that comes in a brown case or something?
No, I didn't have a case. This one, I should have dug a photograph out really. It was silver. This was the early 70s, so it's sort of like 1974. I got it off my aunt's catalogue. I had to pay 70p a week, or my mum paid 70p a week for it. It was about £6 and something. Fixed focus, cassette film, she dropped in the back, which I think wasn't 35mm. And if you wanted to flash, it had a little cube that went on top.
I remember
and
that
rotated. And the smell of that flash I was quite addicted to that. So that was really my first camera.
Oh, wow.
Maybe not completely true, because my grandfather, thinking about it, gave me one of those old 1920s cameras that were flat and they hinged out and the lens bellowed out.
Oh, yeah.
He gave me one of those, which I probably took to pieces because I was an inquisitive child. But that was the Kodak Instamatic was my first proper film camera. And again, with that, I tended to take people candidly on the fly without asking them to pose or say cheese. So yeah,
I guess that you were into street then, but you didn't know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had no idea. I mean, either I'm overthinking it and looking back and thinking maybe that was the case, but it seems to have some sort of threads that follow me through my life as a photographer.
So when did you realize you were doing street then?
On and off. This sounds really bad. On and off during the 1980s, I worked in the civil service. I was fortunate enough to live in work in Victoria Street. So I'd always be able to look down from the office windows, which, fun enough, I do today. And I took a few shots back then. Then I had one of those little tiny Russian cameras that wasn't popular at the time, and it broke. But I remember being in a pub, taking a surreptitious photograph of the bar and the people at the bar. But I didn't have the confidence to take a camera out onto the street, although I liked doing street photography at the time. I just didn't have the courage.
Right. So I guess when we look at who influenced you, would that be your mother, or would that be I suppose your mother influenced you to get into photography?
Yeah.
So who after your mother?
It's hard to say. I was quite charmed by some commercials that would turn up on TV for the Olympus trip, and this would have this guy in it. The tagline to the end of the commercial for Olympus trip, which was a fixed 35mm rangefinder style camera, was "Who do you think you are? Do you think you're David Bailey?" And in one of those commercials, David Bailey turned up. And I thought that's what a photographer looks like. So I became quite interested in photography. If we just move on to about 1978 or 79, I persuaded my dad to go to Dixon's and buy this SLR, a Shinnon CS, full metal body, screw-in lens. It was a beast of a camera, but I loved it. I've still got one, not the original one because I lost that, but I've still got one. And then I gradually started to get into photography from there, really. But not street photography. I did a lot of portrait photography.
Right.
I was very nervous about taking my camera out on the street, which I regret to this day.
Yeah, the Shinnon, I think, was one of my first cameras as well. I remember that, getting that from Dixon's, wasn't it?
Dixon's was the place.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That
it was
then
like,
it was sort of superseded by Currys, I think, wasn't it? And
yes.
ups.
Yeah, I loved Dixon's so much. The staff hadn't got a clue, which was great because neither did I, really, which was really
So the
useful.
blind leading the blind then.
To a degree, yeah. And then when we had, when I got married and had child, I put all the photography away because, you're bringing up a family, you're going to work.
Yeah.
I was still niggled a bit by the fact that I still liked photography. And in the early 2000s, I think I got my old Olympus OM2 Spot out. I've always liked Olympus, and that obviously goes back to the fact I like those Olympus commercials, but they always produce kind of small cameras. I like and to this day, I like a small camera. And even then, I was kind of taking pictures of family. I wasn't really doing a great deal of street photography. And for some unknown reason, I didn't really get heavily into street photography until 2017.
Oh, right. Okay.
By then, I'd had and it was a Nikon camera. I got one. I had bought one originally, sold that, and I got another one for my 50th birthday. And I kind of thought, well, I feel okay now about going out on the street with it. And I went out with a friend, which is always useful. And I started to take street photographs, and they were that type of street photography of random people on random streets. It took me a while, as you progress and learn. But 2017 was the kind of big year for me in street photography.
All right. Well, I think I started around about the same time, so we got quite a lot in common then, really.
Yeah,
I started late 2017.
I think I was as well. It must have been maybe August. And weirdly enough, I started in Sheffield.
All right. Okay.
That's where I did my street photography in Sheffield, which was a bit strange. I do have a glass of apple juice.
I believe
I'm
you.
just going
I
to take
believe you.
a sip of. Yeah, it's very, very nice apple juice.
So
Yeah.
who would be your street photographer influences then?
Going back to the 70s, there was a weekly magazine, because weekly magazines were popular then, called You and Your Camera. I rebought some volumes of it recently, and that came out in the 70s because I'd already got a camera by then, so I wanted to know much about photography as I can. And it's great for the history of photography as well, but one photographer struck me immediately, and that was the well-known one, Henri Cartier-Bresson. And I looked at his photographs, and I thought, firstly, they're in black and white. So I kind of thought, wow, this is different. This is something that I like, this is something that I can get into, even though I didn't have the courage to take my camera out, into the street and stuff. He was an influence with that very early influence, without a doubt,
So was it his style then? Because his are mostly candid, aren't they?
Yeah, it's most candid. Yeah, more or less that kind of style, because I was trying to look for people who weren't necessarily aware that I was there or that their photograph was being taken. I kind of think that that's important. Although when people do realize you're there and they give you a smile rather than a scowl, or even a scowl, I don't mind actually, as long as I've captured it. I don't necessarily mind, but it's that unobtrusive kind of recording of daily life that he did. That I liked, and he got quite kind of arty at it as well, which I also liked as well,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think HCB is what the a lot of photographers feel is the beginning of street photography, even though
yeah.
there was some before him.
Yeah, there was quite a lot before him, but I think and again, he's the modern, so it's 35mm
Mm. Yeah,
film rather than big plate cameras
yeah,
and wet film cameras that they used
yeah,
to
yeah,
use in
yeah.
the
The big
50s and
ones. Yeah,
60s. Yeah, yeah, and he definitely wanted a small camera so he wasn't as obvious in what he was doing. So he could also, if you're traveling, it's nice to be traveling light
mm.
and not carrying a camera on a wooden tripod or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So yeah. The only thing that kind of irritates me a little bit is about him, and not so much him, it's about people because they get a bit kind of stuck in the things he said, which is that decisive moment thing. I mean, I'd argue there's never a decisive moment. There are a series of decisive moments.
Mm.
And with a camera that's got a burst facility on it, you're taking 8 to 9 photographs a second anyway. So there isn't a decisive moment as such for me. But the other thing I did like that he said your first 10,000 photographs are your
Yeah,
worst, which to me is just get them out of the way, learn from them. We all have to start somewhere, but your first 10,000 photographs, get through them because you'll be a better
yeah.
photographer at the end.
That's a process of learning, isn't it? Those
Yeah,
first 10,000. It's like saying, you've got a couple of years or something. Can't go out there and do it, and
yeah,
then you really start learning then.
yeah, absolutely. And my photography has got better from 2017 to now.
Hmm.
And even when I was looking at some photographs from last year at the camera club I'm at, I was looking at them taken last year, and they put them all up. We went through them, about 10 shots. I'm thinking I don't like any of these at all. And that might just be being critical, but I felt that I'd progressed from,
Yeah,
even after a year. But
I think
yeah,
I think
that I like.
yeah, I think
Sorry.
we're our own biggest critics, aren't we?
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, and I say this all the time, is the photographs I like, as you know, I post 3 photographs a day and have done for nearly 3 years now. The ones I like get very few likes. The ones I don't like, dozens. But I don't even like that photograph, but
Yeah,
other people do,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I'm not a good judge of my own stuff.
yeah, yeah.
You know.
Well, we've got to all do a bit of it, don't we? Really. So
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think you've already answered this really, but a lot of your pictures, or about 90% of your pictures, I
Yeah.
think, are black and white, aren't they?
Ooh,
So,
yeah.
and I've noticed that when I've seen a lot of your pictures, and even going around with you the other day, you like reflections
Yeah.
in windows, and your other
Yes.
big like is passengers on trains.
Yeah, because I think people travel in their own little cocoon or their own little bubble, and they're completely oblivious mostly. you know a lot
Yeah.
of those shots are taken on my camera, on my phone,
Um,
because the camera is outstanding. um and I do like those as well. The reflections, I was just looking through my book of Saul Leiter photographs, and he likes reflections as well, so that clearly is
an
an
influence, yeah.
influence. But black and white for me is also very, very important as well. Although Saul Leiter does a lot of color, and he was one of the first for street photographers to do color as well.
Yeah.
You know, um, but yeah, that's the kind of stuff I tend to like, and I like light and dark, and often sometimes too dark, as you mentioned
Yes.
before. No, I'm fully aware of it. I completely understand that. I'm not embarrassed by it. I kind of think, yeah, you're absolutely right.
You got
They
to
are
learn,
just
yeah,
too
yeah,
dark.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
do you ever do color, or is it all black and white? I think I've
It
seen some
depends.
color.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, sometimes I've got a little folder in Lightroom called Free Photographs I'm going to post, and that's got a few photographs in it, probably too many. And I sometimes just find all the color ones and post all of those.
Right,
But they are like 2 or 3 years ago sometimes,
right.
or sometimes more recently. But yeah, black and white does it for me. And I have that horrible thing when I look at a photograph and think, it'd be better in black and white.
Yeah, I noticed that in your early days,
Yeah,
black and
yeah.
white. Yeah, yeah.
I've toned it down a little bit now, but even so, when I look, I think, no, we're better in black and white. Definitely.
Hey,
You know.
have you heard the saying that photographing color and you're photographing the clothes, and photographing black and white, you photograph the person and personality?
Yeah, I have. I kind of think that's probably true because color for me is a distraction. It distracts us. from what we should be looking at, which is sometimes the shape, the form, and the light, particularly the light. And I think you get more black and white portraits like from film studios in the 40s and the 50s, David Bailey's stuff in the 60s and the 70s, again Don McCullin as well. I mean, I think he takes a photograph of Francis Bacon that's completely wrong compositionally, but works so well, and you actually see the artist better. You see their mood and their personality better in black and white than you do in color, because I think you're too busy looking at the colors, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some pictures or scenes that actually cry out for color.
Yes.
So for me, when I do Manchester Pride, I mean, that's very, very colourful, and it would be a crime to actually do that in black and white, I think. But
it's funny because I look at it and think, I must do that in black and white.
Yeah, it's just what you see, isn't it, really, and what hits you. So
absolutely,
I do tend to look for colour, as you probably noticed the other day. I do look for colour. I like bright colours and clashing colours.
Yeah, my favourite colour is red.
Yes.
If it's got red in it, I'm kind of there.
Yeah.
Well,
red is seen as the photographer's colour, isn't it, really?
Which that explains a lot then. I hadn't really realised it was seen as a photographer's colour, because I really do like red a lot.
Yeah, I like red and yellows and, well, anything bright, nice and bright, really.
Yeah, I mean, if the shot, I mean, I took a shot of the view up from Sheffield Station, which I posted recently in black and white, and a friend of mine said, well, what does the colour shot look like? So I recently posted that, and I kind of looked at the colour shot thinking, yeah, maybe that does look better, I think.
You never know. We might change you into a colour photographer yet.
It's possible. I mean, you see, I do like being outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because you have to be, because I can get too staid. When we went round Manchester, you're very much into photographing people. And I said this to you, I'm quite close up. And I wasn't really used to that. And we've done it now twice in Sheffield as well. When I look at my photographs of people close up, or, like you see their heads and the feet and stuff, I kind of think, actually, that isn't too bad. I fall in love with my 56mm, 85 equivalent lens, because and every time that we go out, I think I'd probably take that lens with me, and a couple of other cameras, obviously. But there's nothing wrong with trying for color. I just see in black and white a lot and there's a lot of reasons for why I see in black and white. Not that I'm colorblind or anything, but I like black and white films.
Yeah. Well,
I can.
Well, you like what you like, isn't it, really? So,
yeah.
I do a bit of mixture, really. But I think at the moment, I'd say mine's mostly colour. But
yes,
if you asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said the other way around. It was mostly black and white. So I keep changing, really.
It's no bad thing, I think. And I love the saying about comfort zones that I think, oh God, I always know him as The Rock. Anyway, the actor The Rock said is the problem with comfort zones is nothing ever grows there.
Yeah.
So, I'm happy to come out of my comfort zone, as hard as it is sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I've got another friend who said, why don't you shoot more in color? And I did start to, and I've stopped.
Well, yeah, I think street photography is a lot about fear, isn't it? And is it George Adair that says everything you want is the other side of fear?
It absolutely is. It's a great quote as well. I like that one. I have heard that before, and it is absolutely true.
Yeah, I like that quote. I'm going to have it put on a T-shirt, I think.
I think you should. I think you should. Which reminds me, I must. Yeah. We'll talk about T-shirts later.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, more apple juice. Sorry.
Okay. So what are your triggers then? When you go round, what do you look at? What do you see?
A lot of the time it's the light. I get, if you're with me for long enough, you'll know I go a bit gaga if I see a well-lit scene. And by light, I don't mean that the light could be coming in at all angles. It could be one source light, it could be two source light, it could be multiple sources of light, but they have to work for me. And I always see them in black and white. So light is always a trigger, particularly harsh light and shadows. Like when I did the New York shots worked so well because the sun was perfect in New York for that time. But other triggers, I think I mentioned before, people that wear hats, people that wear sunglasses, people that look odd, people that look different. And I mean odd in the way they dress, not necessarily how they look odd themselves, although sometimes that also is a trigger as well. But it's hats, sunglasses, And if they look like they'd look really good in black and white, or if the scene looks like it looked really good in black and white, then I'm kind of there. It's hard to identify, but those are the major triggers, and reflections in windows.
Yes, yes, and
Yeah,
passages, and yeah.
and passages. I don't travel on the train much now. I used to travel from, I used to live in Goldthorpe into
I
Sheffield
think
every day.
every other one of your pictures is a passenger on the train.
Yeah, I've not shot as many now. I'm still going, but I've still got photographs that I'm posting now. That I've started to post more recent ones. But mostly I have to go back to August 2022, and that is where I've got a lot of photographs. That's where I'm at the moment. But I keep getting distracted because people keep taking me out to places like Manchester
Oh well,
and Sheffield.
we'll have to stop doing that then.
No, you don't need to stop doing that at all. That was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my triggers.
Yeah. So I know that you've got at least 3 or 4 cameras. So do you want to
Yeah,
just very briefly go through them?
I don't mind going through. I actually particularly got them next to me here. So this is the Panasonic TZ100, and it's like this. This is the camera I took to New York. It's very tiny, very small. It fits in my pocket. It is wonderful. It's on spot metering, as you know, my cameras are. It's unobtrusive. It's automatic, manual. It's got aperture priority. Everything you'd want on a camera. It's a telephoto lens, which I'd like to say I don't use that often, but I do. Sorry, let me bring that back up so you can see it. And it's my camera that I carry around with me all the time. I used to carry a Ricoh around with me all the time, but this is the one for me. This is my go-to camera, the one that I carry around with me. It is just superb. It makes me look like a tourist, and honestly, I don't mind that. So that's my daily camera all the time.
Sorry, what lens is it? Did you say?
It's 25 to 250 zoom.
All right, okay. That's quite a range then.
It's quite a range. It's got a 1-inch sensor, so it's a slightly larger sensor than the cameras normally have. That makes it. This was my New York camera. This did all the shots, bar at least 2 or 3 that I took in New York, and it's really, really good. I can't emphasize that too much. That one. Camera that I bought recently because I've gone back to micro 4/3 is an Olympus. I had one of these originally. This is really nice camera. Again, it's very tiny.
Retro.
It is, yeah, as Olympus did. It's got that screen that comes out and back in again. That's really nice. It's got a manual lens on it at the moment, which is nice to use. So it's got a 25mm lens on it, which is manual focusing, which I do like doing manual focusing. It's a Artisan's lens, TT Artisans from China. They're very good, fully metal.
Mm-hmm.
And that 25 actually equates, due to the sensor size of the camera, to 50. I took this one to Lincoln with me recently. It's light, it's small, it fits into my coat pocket. It is such a nice camera. Really, really nice, that one. I like that one a lot. I think we're now going to get onto the, no, there's one other Panasonic before we get onto the Fujis. Get another camera I bought recently, Fuji GX9. This is a lovely camera. Again, it's micro 4/3 sensor. It has a screen that comes up at the back, which is useful for when I'm copying Vivian Maya and just looking down to take the shot. It also has this viewfinder that goes up so I can look down, which is really useful. It is beautiful. It has a little trick that if I show you, the flash comes up like that. That's quite nice. Pop that one back. And it is phenomenally good for street photography. Again, it's small. I wear that one around my neck a lot. I need to take that out again because I haven't done it in a long time. When I say a long time, I mean a couple of weeks. Let's pop that one down there. Only a couple more to go. This is the camera I took out when we were in Sheffield. This is the Fuji X-A1. This is quite old, and it's really loud. Let's just fire it off and see what I mean by loud. Well, I think that's loud.
I can hear that.
Yeah. This has also got a nice Chinese lens on it. This is the 7 Artisans, and this is a pancake lens. It's 18mm fixed 6.3 f number. And basically, and I know this sounds really odd, but it's more or less point and shoot, which I like. This is the one that took the view up from Sheffield Station. It's also a lens because it's so wide, although it equates to about 27 millimeters on this camera with this sensor in it. It means I can get in really close. And a lot of people don't really notice it. And a lot of people just don't think you're really taking their photograph. It is a brilliant, lovely camera. And again, pocketable.
You can use that one-handed, I guess, can't you?
Oh yeah, all the time. I use a lot of cameras one-handed. Again, that comes up at the back, which is really good for staring down, so I don't have to look at people necessarily. Put that one there. And this will be the camera that I like kind of the most, but I don't use it the most. And this is the Fuji. And this is when they went retro on us, as Fuji do very well. So this is the Fuji X100.
All right.
Beautiful camera. This is my second one. And again, people either think it's a film camera because it looks like one, or they're not too worried about it. It equates to 35mm lens. There are some criticisms of focusing slow. I've never found that. It focuses really well for me. And that is just a few of the cameras. That I have 3 others, but we won't go and look at those.
Okay. It looks like they could stick all your cameras in your pocket.
Yes, and that's basically true.
Go down wade under with all these cameras.
Yeah, I don't tend to take too many out with me. The most I take is 2. If you include my phone, that's 3.
Yeah.
But what I like are unobtrusive cameras. Although when I'm out with you, it's usually with the Fuji X-T2 and the lens on that, or the X Pro 1. I'm not addicted to cameras. No, that's not true. Obviously, I am. But why I have so many different cameras is because they bring a different way of taking photographs to me.
Mm.
And they have different kind of controls and different kind of feel when I'm out with them that feels really good. That little Panasonic I carry around all the time, and I took some photographs this morning on the way into work. I took some when I went off to the barber's to have my hair cut at lunchtime. It's always with me, so I can always take photographs. And again, these are nice small cameras that I can carry forever, and they're not big and bulky and heavy.
I think one of the problems I have, I have 2 Nikons and a Sony, and I think sometimes I've got the Sony in my hand and I think it's the Nikon, and it's completely different sort of settings and dials and knobs and things, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, why is this not working? It's because I've got the one camera. Or and
I try always make sure that I've made sure that I've decided what camera it's going to be before I go out. But I will take 2 cameras out. I don't subscribe to that one camera, one lens thing,
right, that
street photographers really go for.
Yeah,
I thought I would, but I don't.
Okay. All right. So when you go out into Sheffield, then, so what's your process? Do you go out with a plan in mind, or do you just go out and see what's there?
I don't really go out with a plan in mind, although maybe I do. If it's a particularly good day and the light's particularly good, it's the light that I want to capture. But then having said that, if there's an interesting scene that isn't well lit, I'll take that as well.
Mm.
I've been going around Sheffield now for the last 3 or 4 years. So when I step out the door, it's just a case of which direction I go in. I don't really have a plan in mind. I like discovering stuff, so I don't necessarily, maybe subconsciously I do, maybe I try and tell myself I don't have a plan, but I tend to just go out and see what's around.
So you don't go out with a project then in mind?
No, because I've got lots of folders in Lightroom just called project this, project that.
Right, okay.
And whatever I take normally fits into one of those.
All right, okay. So you take pictures and then you put them into a project folder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So editing is something that everybody does these days. So how much editing do you do? And in what?
Very little. Very little, and I use Lightroom. It's courses for courses, whatever works for people.
Yeah.
I do a lot of light editing. I crop a lot. But recently I've been looking at photographs thinking, well, maybe I won't crop so tightly in this time and see what people think. But my editing process tends to be, well, I usually straighten it up if I think it needs straightening up. Dehaze is a big thing for me because dehaze makes black and white more black and white.
Yeah.
But I have to back off of that from time to time. I used to go used to do all the light things. You do contrast, highlight, blacks, whites. Either the cameras have got better, or I just don't go near those. It's mostly dehaze, texture, crop. That's it. I don't heavily edit because I used to do that at the beginning, and I think it ruins photographs.
So
You know?
when is too much?
I think when you start to ruin, for me, when you ruin the light of the photograph, I think when you start to make it look less like a photograph and more like something else. I have very strong views, and my personal views, not very on the using of Photoshop. I'm not a fan. I've seen people use Photoshop well, and I've just seen that recently, and I've seen people use Photoshop really badly. Those composites that crop up from time to time. You think, no, don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not a lover of composites, I'm afraid. It feels like cheating somehow.
Yeah, I kind of annoy people because I say to them, you're not a photographer if you're doing that, you're a graphic designer.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that does wind them up.
Yeah.
But used, it's like every tool. Just because you can do something doesn't mean to say you should do it. But it's like everything. Once it comes along, people kind of go, "Oh, I can change the sky. I can change the background. I can take this pillowcase out, or pillar box rather out, or I can add this. And you think, no, it's not really photography.
That's not street either, is it really?
Not for my taste.
Because
No,
you're supposed to leave it as it is, and don't take anything out or put anything in. As soon as you start doing that, then it's not right.
No, I always say, because people say, "Oh, I can take the lamppost out." No, leave it in. It's street photography. Just leave it.
Yeah, just leave it. Yeah.
Another guy said, "Oh, I can take all the bins out of this photograph in the street. Doesn't look good." No, just put them back in because that's where they're supposed to be. But it's what people like.
It is what it is, isn't it? You can't stop. I think it's part of the process. I think really, because certainly when I first got Lightroom, I used everything and I overused it.
Me too.
And Photoshop. I mean, I'm too embarrassed to talk about some of the stuff I used to do with Photoshop, but I don't do it anymore now. So
no, it's
anyway, that's life. So
it's learning,
yeah. So as an admin, you've been an admin now for what, a year? On and off, yeah. I think there's one or two things that keep coming back round, isn't there? That we have to talk to them about. So things like the homeless. We always have, not us, but in the group, there's always arguments and discussions about should we photograph the homeless.
Yeah.
So what's your view?
My view is simple: yes. Now, I don't do it that often. I've started to do it because I think it's important. And some things I say about street photography is just don't flinch, because you're recording the early 21st century. And if you're going to leave things out, and it's up to the individual.
Then is it?
No, it's not a reflection. I think did you do the photograph of the woman on the IV on the park bench? Was that you? It was a really good photograph of this old woman just on a park bench. She had intravenous drip in her arm.
No, that was me.
Yeah, everyone in the group, well, not everyone in the group, people that don't like that just went ballistic. How can you dare? I think, but she's on the street. This is life.
Yeah, it's life. It's life. That's the way I see it. I think, I mean, there are some really bad pictures of the homeless, sort of totally out of focus, and there's no story there at all, and there's no connection. So those I think are really bad. But if they do it well, and there are one or two who do it really well,
yes, there are.
I've got no problems with it at all.
I don't either. I mean, all I would say to people is, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. You don't have to agree with it. You're not wrong in not agreeing with it. It's just that this is what we do.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with it. It's hard to do though.
And children's the another one that keeps cropping up.
I've kind of, as I've said, I've mellowed a bit more because I was a foster carer for like 9 years. So the exploitation of children by their own parents at times was quite disturbing. So I brought that with me. I've kind of relaxed that a bit because I found recently, and I'm about to post one after this, that has photographed at least two children in a photograph, not directly. I'm not pointing the camera at them. They just happen to be walking into the scene.
Mm.
And I kind of thought, well, yeah. I mean, I did photograph very early on. I did some photography and street photography in Barnsley, and I did a group of schoolgirls walking down the road in black and white, and that got on the group I was with, no problem. I did the same photograph, but it was boys, and people messaged me to say you can't do that. And I kind of thought, but 2 weeks ago I did the photograph of the girls on the street, and this week it's just some schoolboys, and now you're complaining. I don't understand what the difference is.
Yeah.
As long as it's not exploitive, and that always worries me. It depends where you. I find some of the Indian photography of poverty very difficult to deal with, particularly with kids. But that's an emotional thing rather than a.
But it's still life, though, isn't it?
It is, and it should be reflected. We shouldn't necessarily. No, we shouldn't necessarily. We shouldn't be of trying to paper over it. You know.
Okay.
So yeah, I got there in the end.
Okay. So we're running out of time now, Steve. So
oh gosh,
yeah,
wow, that was quick.
So the last question then for me is, what's your ambition?
I think well, try and be as good a street photographer as I can, without a doubt. That's really important to me, as best as I can be. And the other one is just to pass on my experience as best I can, without telling people this is the way to do it, because everybody arrives at street photography, they do it their way. But I do have a few hints and tips that might help you on your way. Some are very practical. Wear decent shoes.
Yeah.
Don't come out with a huge camera bag full of lenses. Have a couple of lenses, fine. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
And also just read the scene. If you're on a street and it looks dodgy, don't put yourself in any kind of awkward position. Yeah.
If there's a gang of kids, I wouldn't really go by them, to be honest, especially if they're teenagers.
Yeah, teenagers in particular.
Yeah.
But then again, it depends how you approach them as well, and depends what they're like. You can normally judge it reasonably well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so situations like that, you generally want to put your camera away. But
I just really, isn't it? So
yeah,
Yeah.
And don't stick your camera in people's faces either. You're not all Bruce Geldon,
Yeah. I must admit, I'm impressed that he can do it, but I haven't got the confidence to do that myself.
Well, he was nearly 7 foot tall. He's 6'5" or something. And there's documentary on him just towering over these people, and he looked like the kind of guy you didn't want to really mess with. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, he sort of exudes that confidence, doesn't he? So
yeah, I admired his style, but it's not anything I could do. So it's just experience and just to go out and stuff like we do, which I really enjoy, and enjoy street photography.
Well, we're going down to Birmingham next.
Are you?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
When?
9th, Friday.
February.
Yeah. So if you want to come, I'll talk to you about it.
Okie doke. Yeah. I'll have a think. I've been to Birmingham because I went to the exhibition centre once.
We're going very early though.
Oh God, are you?
6
anyway,
o'clock.
we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. All right. Listen, Steve. But yeah, we're just about to run out of time. So
we are, aren't we?
Thank you
Anytime,
very
Ian.
much for your time.